Are you done packing yet? Please make it quick. We plan to remodel your rooms once you move out. My oldest son's wife, Sarah, said impatiently, not even offering to help us pack. She seemed thrilled to claim this house as their own. Little did she know. Glancing at my husband, John, he silences me with a look and turns a serene smile to Sarah. We're sorry for keeping you wait. We'll leave by tomorrow. With the movers coming in, it'd be best if you two stay in your rooms. We were leaving the furniture and appliances that we shared, with Sarah and David, behind. And beside our stuff from the bedroom and wardrobe, we didn't have much left to pack. We'll probably take less than half an hour to move out. The following day, our farewell was surprisingly dry. Well, we're off. All right. Take care. No apologies, no words of gratitude. And they didn't see us off either. Sarah and David simply glanced at us from their leisure in the living room. Since they were so indifferent, we didn't need to make a fuss about leaving. But as we got in the cab silently, I couldn't help but worry about our cat we were leaving with them. Could Sarah properly care for her? Would she raise her with affection? I dialed a number on my phone as our house receded from view through the cab's window. In hindsight, it might have been my sixth sense that ticked off then. I'm Patricia, 64. I've been married to John, who's a year older than me, for 35 years. We've never had a major fight, and I would say we're pretty close. John worked for a foreign company and was often busy, but he always spent his spare time with the family. With his recent retirement, I was excited to spend more time with him. But it seems like I was the only one happy about his retirement. Our eldest son's couple was upset about it, and it was apparent. David and Sarah have been living with us in our house for a year now, since their marriage. Sarah, David's wife, was actually the one who suggested we live together. We have a subway station nearby, and with a well-developed public transportation in our area, commuting to work and going for shopping is pretty easy. Which is why Sarah loved our place. My husband, John, and I had initially been reluctant, considering they were newlyweds, but we eventually gave in, leading to our current situation. Not even in our wildest dreams did we think things would turn out this way. What on earth are you thinking? That was one day, about 2 months after John retired from his company. Just as I had returned from shopping, I heard John's booming voice and froze. In the living room, John was scolding our eldest son, David, who was sitting on the couch. It was unusual to find John this angry, since he's usually calm and gentle. What's going on? With a heavy sigh, John turned to me. David was rummaging through my bag and stealing money from my wallet. What? Apparently, he lost big on a trifecta bet at the Kentucky Derby and is strapped for cash. With that, John snatched a few dollar bills and his wallet from David's hand. It was indeed John's wallet. I was sure of it because I had given it to him as a gift on our 25th wedding anniversary. The fact that David was holding the wallet and money was undeniable proof that what John said was true. David, didn't you quit wagering on horses? You lost big before and swore you'd never do it again. So why? Whether he heard me or not, David just continued to watch TV without responding. Ever since he was a child, he would often ignore us when we lectured him or talked about something that didn't interest him. There are times that he doesn't remember the things I've told him verbally. This time was no different, and it seemed my pleas had no effect. However, even without an answer from David, I had a hunch about why he had started betting on horse racing again. Oh, it must be Sarah. David never cared about horse racing to begin with. He would never stoop so low as to take money from someone else's wallet, and he had never committed any crime like shoplifting. If asked what caused such a drastic change in David, who was a hard-working office worker, I would answer without a doubt, it was meeting Sarah. Sarah is a bright and active woman. When we were first introduced to her, I hoped she would help bring David, who was introverted, out of his shell. But back then, I never knew about her hobby. That she was a huge fan of horse racing. And that her sense of spending is completely off-kilter. "You heard your mother talking. Why don't you at least say something?" said my frustrated husband as he turned off the TV. At that, David finally opened his mouth. "Shut up! I've paid you back, so stop nagging me. Besides, what's got you so worked up about a couple of $100 bills?" "What?" "I was actually surprised at how light your wallet was. You've really gone downhill, haven't you, Dad?" "Well, I'm retired, so what did you expect?" "How lame." With that, David left the living room. I almost tried to stop him, but my husband held me back. "I'm at fault too, for carelessly leaving my purse around." Besides, repeatedly scolding him isn't going to help. But his attitude is far too unacceptable. This is too much. John has never been the kind of person to flaunt his role as the main breadwinner of the family, but it's a plain fact that it's thanks to him that we are able to maintain our lifestyle. And he provides for David and his wife as well. They're able to save on rent and on living expenses as well, since they always come up with an excuse to not contribute to the household's expenses. So it's my husband who's been covering majority of our expenses. And yet, instead of respecting John, David disparaged him. David's comments were unacceptable, but I was also enraged with his wife for introducing him to gambling. A few days later, still feeling uneasy, I decided to ask David's wife directly. "It seems like David is struggling with money lately. Do you know anything about it?" "Oh, he apparently took a big hit at the Kentucky Derby." "You knew about it?" "Yeah. After all, I was the one who suggested we go together." Just as I thought. Sure enough, David had been drawn back into horse racing by Sarah. "Why would you do such a thing?" "David was trying to quit horse racing." "Is that so?" I had no idea. "Please, Sarah. I'm begging you not to invite David to the horse races anymore. If this keeps up, won't you be in trouble too?" "Well, we each have our own earnings and we're just doing what we like, so I have no problem with it." I was taken aback by her reply. Certainly, both David and Sarah, as a couple, were earning their own money, and they could spend it on whatever, as long since they had food, rent and clothing covered. "But you two are a married couple, right? You might even have kids in the future. For their sake as well." "We've decided not to have children. We don't want to give up the things we love, just to be tied down raising a kid." I was shocked again by her response. There was too much information to process all at once. But, in a way, it made sense. Having children would require you to have more savings, by tens of thousands of dollars. Which is probably why they can be so careless with money. But even without children, a married couple is still a married couple. "But as a couple, you should support each other when in trouble, right? David is in trouble right now." "Well, why don't you, Patricia, and the rest of the family help him out? You're his parents and well off, right?" "Oh, are you living off your pension now?" "But you had your retirement fund, didn't you?" "My husband worked for a foreign company, so we don't have a retirement fund." "Really? That's a bummer. I thought you had a nice retirement payout." "We don't. So I need you and David, as a couple, to be more financially responsible. To be honest, the living expenses are already quite a burden and we can't afford to cover for you guys anymore." "Isn't that David's fault for losing?" I can't take responsibility for that. But anyway, we can't right now. I was unable to secure a promise to support David and found myself ejected from David and Sarah's room. A week passed, and David's financial problems remained unsolved. Was he so desperate that he had to pilfer money from his parents' wallet? Shouldn't we help him before he resorts to illegal activity? I discussed it over and over with my husband, John, but in the end, this was the result of us spoiling him in the past. John convinced me that we needed to be firm this time, for his future's sake, and I had to agree. We were providing him breakfast and dinner, and he had a pass for commuting to work. The goal was simply to have him make it until his next paycheck. But then, the situation took an unexpected turn. It happened on a weekend night as we finished dinner and were relaxing in the living room as usual. Ding dong. Our doorbell rang, but we weren't expecting any visitors. So I approached the front door to see who was visiting us this late at night. I opened the door, wondering if I had a package scheduled for delivery, only to be taken aback. Standing there was Sarah. Apparently, she couldn't open the door as her hands were full with a cardboard box. "What's going on? What's this box for?" As I hurriedly took the box from her, a rustling sound echoed from within, causing me to let out a scream. In an instant, the box opened, and I found myself face to face with the animal inside. It was a cat. "Isn't it cute? I found it abandoned on my way home," Sarah said, with a proud grin. I was momentarily stunned, but I quickly remembered the gravity of the situation and yelled toward the living room. "John! Go to our bedroom and shut the door immediately." I then closed the box and pushed it back toward Sarah. "Sarah, I'm sorry, but we can't keep a cat in our house." "Huh? Why's that?" I explained to the confused Sarah that my husband, John, has a severe cat allergy. In addition to developing inflammation upon contact with cat saliva, he also suffers asthma-like symptoms when inhaling cat hair or dander. There was even a time in the past when he was rushed to the hospital because David had returned from a friend's house who had cats, with his clothes covered in fur. I thought I had already told Sarah about this when we started living together, but she seemed to have forgotten. "So, what are you saying? Do you want me to take it back where I found it? In this cold weather, it'll die." I was at a loss for words at Sarah's statement. I don't dislike cats. I couldn't possibly tell her to return it to the freezing cold outside. However, I can't expose my husband to danger either. "All right. You can keep it in your room for tonight. But just for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll contact an animal shelter and ask them to take it in." I thought that at the very least, an animal shelter would provide temporary refuge for the cat. Sarah reluctantly nodded in agreement to my suggestion. I told my husband and son about it, and they agreed to let the cat stay in John and Sarah's room for the night. However, things didn't go as smoothly as expected. The next morning, John and Sarah changed their minds and decided to keep the cat. "Sarah, that's not what we agreed on. But I really want to buy it. It's so cute. Why can't I buy it?" "Because your dad is allergic to cats. He'll be fine as long as he doesn't touch it, right? We'll take good care of it, please." "You won't be home during work, right? Who will take care of it then? Can't you do it?" "I can't. Which is why I'm telling you that we can't keep it." "How terrible! I didn't know that even you can be so inconsiderate. Unable to even save a small and cute kitten. Animal shelters, they end up euthanizing them, you know. Handing it over to such a place just because it's convenient for you, turning a blind eye to the sacrifice. Do you know what they call people like you? A boomer. What? You're just a nuisance. If you can't live with this kitten, then please leave this house immediately. I was about to snap back at her, but David chimed in. It's a good opportunity. Why don't you guys move into a retirement home? It might be comfortable. You're at that age, and we're not taking care of you guys. You guys aren't even bringing in any income anymore. I have had enough, you guys. Fine. Suddenly, my husband, who had been silently listening to our argument, interrupted me. Since last night's incident, he's been wearing gloves and a mask and keeping a distance from David and his wife. I felt sorry for making him feel uncomfortable in his own home. The reason we can't keep the cat is my fault. I will take your advice and leave. John. As David said, this might be a good opportunity to consider moving into a retirement home. Saying that, John looked at me. Understanding his intentions, I remained silent. David and his wife probably took this as us giving up on our house. They suddenly became more cocky. We'll take good care of this house, so don't worry. But keep the property under your name. The paperwork and payments are a pain. Moving into a retirement home can be quite expensive, you know? Please handle it yourselves. Don't rely on us, we aren't helping. They seemed relieved, even joyful, at our compliance. This must be their true nature. Perhaps they picked up that kitten on purpose, hoping for this to happen. I realized that we'd been manipulated by Sarah. For the following week, I began packing while looking out for John. David and his wife, who had lost all reserve, continued to throw veiled insults at us, but they probably realized that if John collapsed, our move out would only get delayed. So they did not let the cat out of their room. That was the only promise they kept. Are you done packing yet? Please make it quick. We plan to remodel your rooms once you move out. Sarah said impatiently, not even offering to help us pack. It seemed they couldn't wait to make this house their own. They really don't know anything, do they? I glanced at my husband, but he silently calmed me down and gave a gentle smile to Sarah. We're sorry for keeping you wait. We'll leave by tomorrow. With the movers coming in, it'd be best if you two stay in your rooms. We were leaving the furniture and appliances that we shared, with Sarah and David, behind. And beside our stuff from the bedroom and wardrobe, we didn't have much left to pack. I bet it won't even take 30 minutes to move everything out. And came the next day, our farewell was surprisingly dry. Well, we're off. All right. Take care. No apologies, no words of gratitude. And they didn't see us off either. Sarah and David simply glanced at us from their leisure in the living room. Since they were so indifferent, we didn't need to make a fuss about leaving. But as we got in the cab silently, I couldn't help but worry about our cat we were leaving with them. Could Sarah properly care for her? Would she raise her with affection? I dialed a number on my phone as our house receded from view through the cab's window. In hindsight, it might have been my sixth sense that ticked off then. I did have some concerns about our life after moving out, but things became much easier for me. After all, we had 2 less people to worry about. Everything, from meals to making choices, I only had to put in half the effort I used to make. No need for considerations or worries. I felt like I had regained the freedom I had before David got married. About a week into this new daily routine, I received a call from Sarah one evening. After getting my husband's approval, I answered the call. Suddenly, a frantic voice echoed from the other end of the line, Sarah. Patricia! What's going on? Power and gas have been cut off. It seemed that she had just gotten home. She was so flustered that the call had accidentally switched to video, but all that could be seen on the screen was the light from a flashlight moving around in a pitch-black room. I couldn't see her face. That's because we canceled the contract for our utility bills. Of course they'd be off. What? What do you mean? Why did you cancel them? Are you trying to get us in trouble? Are you doing this because we kicked you out? Sarah, calm down. Is David there? Sarah, somewhat pacified by my husband's calm voice, responded, he just got home. David seemed to be having a mild panic attack at the sight of their pitch-black house. We waited for them to calm down before my husband explained the truth. We've actually sold the house. The new owner has been decided and the handover date is coming up soon. That's why we canceled our utilities contract. Sold? We weren't told about this. Were you going through the process without telling us? We live here. I couldn't help but interrupt Sarah, hearing her entitled claim. I did tell David about the contract and the handover date. Even the progress. However, judging by Sarah's reaction, it was clear that David had not passed the message on to her. Rather, he may not even remember what he was told, given his habit of not listening. Over the past few months, the house had been in chaos due to meetings with real estate agents and potential buyers. David and Sarah, who are hardly at home during the day, must have been oblivious to all of this. There were plenty of chances for them to notice what was going on, but they missed them all. They simply never cared about what went on in the house, and that's on them. So I assumed you guys would move out soon after we did. Have you not moved yet? I decided to ask, feigning ignorance. Immediately, a quarrel erupted on the other end of the line. Accusations were thrown around, it's your fault, I didn't know, we've been fooled, and so on. The image of David and Sarah arguing in the dark was both surreal and amusing. However, once their argument ended, David and Sarah turned their frustration back on us. Even so, isn't it overbearing to proceed with this without our consent? I don't remember agreeing to this. Well, I did get a reply. When I asked if it was okay to sell the house, you said, yeah, sure. Technically, all I received was an absent-minded response from David, who was watching TV at the time. Still, he agreed to it. It's his fault for not listening and giving careless responses. When I told him, David was momentarily speechless, but then he seemed to have a change of heart and shouted loudly. Enough! I get it. So, what are we supposed to do? What do you mean, what are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to live? Where do we go now? You prepared a place for us, right? At David's yelling, my husband asked back in a puzzled voice, why? Our son was taken aback by this answer. You kicked us out. Why do we have to find you a new place? But we didn't really kick you out. You were planning to leave anyway, right? So, it's not our fault at all. Besides, it was your decision to sell the house. It's your responsibility to secure housing for us, since we are affected by this. Yeah, that's right. For a rental, you pay some amount for leaving. Then you gotta pay us some money, too. I know you made a lot from selling the house. Rental, huh? Before paying you any vacating fee, you should pay us the rent for the period you were living in that house, shouldn't you? Plus, we covered all your living expenses, too. Let's have you pay all of that up front. Including rent and living expenses, it'll be about 1 million yen for a year. You can pay it right now, can't you? David and his wife remained silent with a groan. Considering the David's financial situation, we're well aware that they are tight on money. Realizing that we had the upper hand, David started apologizing to appease us. Haha, that's right. We should be the ones to pay first. But we don't have the money right now. So we can't. So to make sure we can pay you back properly, why don't we live together again? Yeah, that's right. Please tell us where you're moving to. We'll move in with you guys right away. They never cared about where we were moving to when we left. I sneered at them deep down, and I refused. No. We can't live with a cat. Wasn't that the reason you kicked us out? We'll get rid of the cat right away. So, I felt deeply sorry for the cat at their excessively selfish words. As expected, for David and his wife, the cat was nothing more than a tool to kick us out of the house. As long as it benefits you, you're willing to put others' needs over your wants. Doesn't that make you a boomer? When they had their own words thrown back at them, Sarah started to cry. But we have no obligation to be swayed by their tears. Besides, the place we moved into is an apartment for elderly, so young people like you can't live there. You're the ones who suggested it, remember? Saying we should go to a nursing home? As you said, it's very comfortable. Don't worry, my husband and I will live happily here. After talking over them, I hung up. All I could hear from the phone was David and Sarah crying. In the end, we never heard an apology from them. Soon after that, the young couple left the house. Apparently, they had no savings, and they both declared bankruptcy and now live in public housing. When we returned to the house once for cleaning before handing it over, we were able to hear about David and Sarah from our friendly neighbor's wife. According to her, they had quite a hard time packing in a house without electricity. And as expected, they left the cat behind when they moved. Fortunately, I had asked the neighbor's wife to take care of the cat in advance, and she agreed. I offered to help find a new owner for the cat, but she grew attached and decided to keep it. What was surprising was that David and his wife didn't get divorced. Those two are probably meant for each other. They might be eyeing on my husband's inheritance, but we picked a pretty nice apartment, so by the time we pass away, there will hardly be anything left. Finally, we were able to start living our life together as a couple, without any interruption. The senior housing where we moved in has excellent services, with a gym, karaoke, and pool. We even get served freshly made meals 3 times a day. And above all, there are many couples of our age in the building. We have made a lot of new friends here, and we plan to enjoy our retirement years together. Kids who play sports sure do eat a lot, don't they? I wonder if that's enough food for them. Yeah, it's not just food, but clothes and tuition fees cost a lot too. That's right. Groceries and tuition fees really add up. And with exams and everything else coming up. That's why, Nancy, I truly appreciate you sending us meat. From Susan's behavior, I began to suspect her true intentions. Surely, Susan wanted cash, not meat or vegetables. I get that. But it's a fact that growing kids costs a lot in food expenses, right? I hinted at my reluctance to provide cash assistance indirectly. Once you start giving cash, it's clear the demands will only continue. Nancy. While food is important, if we had cash, I think we could buy the kids things that would make them even happier. Susan continues to hint at a strong preference for cash. Understood. Let's do this then. We'll scale back on the meat and vegetables and find another way to support you. Trust Nancy to understand. Thank you. I look forward to our continued relationship. My name is Nancy, 67 years old. Ever since my husband passed away a few years ago, I've been enjoying a carefree life living alone. One thing I've consistently done every month is to send 20 pounds of local meat and seasonally harvested vegetables from my garden to Robert and his wife, who live in Boston. At the beginning of each month, I always call a courier to request delivery of the parcels. When the delivery truck stops in front of my house, and the familiar driver greets me cheerfully, I open the door to welcome him in. Thanks for your hard work in this heat. Please have some coffee before you go. As I offer a chilled coffee from the fridge, the driver smiles genuinely and says, "Thank you as always. Your grandchildren must be delighted. The eldest is playing basketball in elementary school. The middle one is good at studying, and the youngest likes baseball." I can't help but smile as I remember my growing grandchildren's happy faces. Though I haven't seen them in a while, just imagining them enjoying the meat and vegetables I send fills me with joy and makes me feel a bit younger. I feel like Robert could at least show me their faces once in a while, but with his managerial position at a large company, it's probably hard for him to find the time to come visit. The package should be delivered by noon tomorrow at the latest. The kids have probably grown so much since I last saw them. Oh, sorry. Please take care of the package. Without showing any concern for my melting smile, the driver left with a refreshing smile. The next evening, just as I returned from shopping, Susan called. "Nancy? The package arrived a bit ago. Thank you as always." That's okay. I enjoy doing it. How are the kids? Is everyone healthy? I heard there's been a lot of sickness going around, so make sure you all take care. Since I don't see them often, I end up bombarding her with questions. I always talk too much and then remember to consider the listener's feelings. Oh, sorry. I was about to go on too long again. No, it's okay. On the other end of the phone, Susan answered in a flat voice. Susan hasn't been one to engage much in conversation since she first came to introduce herself before marrying Robert. It's not that she's gloomy, if anything, she prefers rather flashy clothes. But something's been bothering me. Every month after the package arrives, Susan always calls to thank me, but her voice seems to grow more subdued with each call. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but although she says thank you, it doesn't seem heartfelt, like there's no energy in her voice. Susan. We haven't seen each other in a while, but are you okay? You sound down, and I'm concerned. When I asked out of concern, Susan's voice tensed slightly as she said, "That's not the case. We're doing just fine." Hearing that, I felt somewhat relieved. But it seemed like her will to continue the conversation was weak, and the next words didn't come easily. "How are the kids doing? The oldest is playing basketball, right?" "Yes, he is." "What about it?" Susan's response, with a slightly cold tone, made me feel a bit sad. Still, it's probably not my place to worry. I don't send the meat and vegetables each month to be thanked. If it's just for my satisfaction, so be it. I'm just happy imagining the grandchildren enjoying them. Still, it would be nice if she could put a bit more joy into her voice. "Doing sports means the kids eat a lot every day, doesn't it? I wonder if what they get is enough." Yeah, it's not just about food, but clothes and tuition fees also require a lot of money. I tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but Susan didn't laugh and responded seriously. "I understand that all too well, having raised Robert. Groceries and tuition really do add up. And with exams and all coming up." That's why, Nancy. I truly appreciate the meat you send us, but... Susan seemed to want to expand on the conversation but hesitated to continue, as if finding it difficult to say more. From the way Susan spoke, I began to sense her true intentions. She probably wants cash instead of meat or vegetables. I'm well aware of that. But it's a fact that those growing kids rack up a significant food bill, right? I want to help with that. I indirectly expressed my reluctance to provide cash assistance. Once you start giving cash, it's clear that the demands will only continue. And unlike meat or vegetables, cash can be turned into anything. I want to see the joy on my grandchildren's faces in a tangible form. For that, I believe food is the most effective, not cash. Nancy. Food is important, of course, but with cash, I think we could buy the kids things that would make them much happier. Susan still hints at a strong preference for cash. Usually, Susan doesn't try to speak up much, but this time, she seemed unusually assertive. Understood. Let's do this then. We'll scale back on the meat and vegetables and find another way to support you. I avoided direct statements and subtly communicated a change in our support strategy. Susan, with a voice full of vigor, said, Just as I expected from Nancy, thank you. I look forward to our continued relationship. And hung up. Upon reflection, Susan was right. The kids need more than just food. Tuition is a significant expense, and so are writing supplies and clothes. Even though Robert is in a managerial position at a large company, it might not be easy economically to raise growing children. With that thought, instead of financial support through meat and vegetables, I decided to buy and send textbooks, dictionaries, and sports shoes the children might like. A month later, I received another call from Susan. From her tone, low and lacking energy, I immediately sensed it wouldn't be a happy conversation. Nancy, thank you for the gifts for the kids. Her words conveyed thanks, but it was clear her heart wasn't in it. There was no sense of joy or gratitude, but rather it felt almost like anger. It's okay. But maybe it wasn't enough? I asked the store clerk for the most popular sneakers for kids these days and bought them, but didn't the kids like them? The first thing that came to my mind was the disappointed faces of my grandchildren. It's not like that at all. Why can't you understand? Susan's voice was laden with emotion, and she made no attempt to hide her anger. But I couldn't understand why Susan was so angry with me. Susan, what's wrong with you? Is there something you're unhappy about? Susan took a deep breath over the phone and said, Listen, Nancy. Don't make me say it over and over. I don't want food or goods, I strictly want cash. When you send those things, their use is already predetermined. Although I had vaguely suspected it, I hadn't expected her to state it so bluntly. I started to worry that there might be some financial troubles in Robert's household. Maybe Robert had made a significant mistake at work and was in a difficult position. Or perhaps he was under so much work-related stress that he had accumulated a large amount of debt and was now trapped in a situation where he couldn't do anything about it. Otherwise, I couldn't think of a reason why Susan would be demanding cash so insistently. If he's a manager at a large corporation, it's hard to imagine them struggling financially under normal circumstances. Are you in some kind of serious situation I don't know about? What does Robert say? As soon as I mentioned Robert's name, Susan started talking faster on the other end. Robert has nothing to do with this. He's busy with work and doesn't want to worry about family matters too much. That's all. While she sounded like a considerate wife worried about her husband, her rapid speech made me feel like she was hiding something she didn't want to be discovered. I see. Let me think a bit more about whether to send goods or cash. I'll try to help in the best way I can. I'm going to hang up now. Avoiding a clear answer, I kept my thoughts vague. Susan kept complaining until the end of the call, but I decided to completely ignore it. In the evening, timing it for when Robert would be finishing work and heading home, I decided to call him. I usually don't call Robert because he's busy with work, but there was something I had to ask this time. Robert must have been surprised to receive an unexpected call from home, answering after just 3 rings. What's up? It's rare for you to call. Is something wrong? Robert skipped the greetings and immediately asked about my situation. He probably thought I had fallen ill and couldn't move. I'm fine. The doctor even joked I'm good for another 50 years. But I have something important to talk to you about, Robert. After hearing I was fine, I could sense tension in Robert's voice over the phone. Is everything okay with your job? Are you facing any troubles? It took Robert a few seconds to respond, then he started laughing. What's going on? Did someone call you saying I've done something bad? That's got to be a scam. Hearing Robert's words, I was relieved my worries were unfounded. At the same time, I felt my suspicions about Susan growing stronger. Susan called, and she seemed to be struggling with money. But if your earnings are fine, there shouldn't be anything to worry about, right? Is that true? I had no idea. Susan hasn't talked to me about any of this. Robert was also confused, hearing about this from me for the first time. I went on to tell him about how Susan had rejected the meat and vegetables I used to send, and even the stationery, clothes, and sneakers I bought for the grandchildren were not well received. Robert, who had been silent at first, became very serious. So that's why we haven't been getting any meat from you. The kids have been complaining about missing your delicious meat. So it was like that. The eldest is playing basketball, right? Are they eating well? The eldest and even the youngest, who recently started baseball. But they complain about the cheap meat Susan buys not being tasty since your meat stopped coming. Knowing the truth from Robert made me decide to verify Susan's intentions. Are you going to be home this Saturday, Robert? Will everyone be there? Evening should be fine. The kids will be home by then. Wait, Mom, you're not planning to come here, are you? That's the plan. Is it inconvenient for you, Robert? No, not at all. Yeah, maybe when the family's all together, we need to have a talk with Susan. Robert readily agreed with my suggestion. On the appointed Saturday, I took the unfamiliar step of flying up to the city. Robert had initially offered to pick me up from the airport, but I declined, thinking it would alert Susan, and took a taxi to their house instead. After pressing the doorbell, "Hello?" a woman's cheerful response came, and the front door opened. "Good evening, Susan. It's been a while." As soon as she saw my face, Susan's expression froze. She seemed to be frantically pondering in her mind whether to accept the sudden appearance of me. "May I come in, even though it's quite sudden?" "That would be. I need to consult with Robert first. It would be troublesome." Susan stood in my way, blocking entry, but Robert came out from the hallway and said, "Good to see you, Mom. Come on in." Noticing brand-name women's shoes at the shoe cabinet. "How much did these shoes cost?" I murmured quietly under my breath. As the barrier Susan set up easily crumbled, she hurried into the living room. I changed into the slippers Robert offered and quickly followed Susan. Entering the living room, I couldn't believe my eyes. A luxurious chandelier hung from the ceiling, shining brightly, and brand-name bags were scattered carelessly on shelves and sofas. The sofa and table were also stylish, made by famous international designers. They did not look like a household struggling financially. Susan, having had everything seen, was now frantically trying to hide the branded items around the house. Robert's earnings should be sufficient for such luxuries. So why did Susan want cash? I tilted my head in an exaggerated manner, and Robert joined in. "Seems like Susan's unhappy with what I make." He glared at Susan. Susan, clearly shaken and finding no way out, finally snapped. "That's right, it's not enough. Is that so bad? It costs that much to be a mother." She raised her voice defiantly. "You wouldn't be short if you didn't insist on buying brand-name stuff. We'd have more than enough if we lived normally." Robert retorted angrily. In response, Susan, without any sign of remorse, glared back at Robert. "Robert might not understand this, but in the world of mom friends, keeping up appearances is essential. If you don't show you're at least a bit well off, you'll be ridiculed by everyone. To avoid that, you can't skimp on spending money on brand names. If something is popular, you have to buy it right away, and for dinner parties, you have to choose slightly more upscale restaurants or you'll be laughed at behind your back by your mom friends. Even now, it's nowhere near enough. I should be going to beauty salons to take care of my skin, and clothes from last year are already out of fashion. I need new ones soon. But then there's Robert talking about saving for the future and for the kids, making it impossible for me to have any freedom with the money." "So you plan to deceive Mom to get money?" "Deceiving? That makes it sound like I committed fraud. No, I just wanted Nancy's help. What's wrong with that?" Susan had completely become defiant. "It's clear now that you only thinks about yourself. What a lonely person." I spat out, and Susan glared at me with a look full of anger. "Huh? I'm explaining how tough the world is, and you still don't get it? Are you keeping up with the times? Or is your mind starting to go? Are you okay, Nancy?" Susan freely insulted me, then sighed deeply. "If anything, I'm the victim here. Selling all that heavy meat you kept sending, considering the shipping costs and conversion, it's been incredibly difficult. And with such small earnings already." Susan was reselling the meat Mom sent? What kind of person does that? Robert held his head in dismay while Susan awkwardly admitted, I only sold a little. Most of it went to feeding the kids. And no one wants to buy stationery or textbooks. It's tough. Well, the sneakers were popular. I could have sold them, but the kids wouldn't let go. Of course. You were even willing to sell the things our children cherish. Then, the 3 grandchildren who had been playing in another room came out, having heard their parents arguing. That's right. Mom was terrible. She tried to sell the shoes Grandma bought us while we were at school. Yeah. It's only because I took them to school to show my friends that they weren't sold. The grandchildren clung to me, their innocent eyes shining as they made their plea. Robert and I were completely dismayed by Susan's actions. All this time, Mom has been helping with the kids' tuition. I said my salary was enough to get by, but she insisted on saving it for the kids' future. Susan has taken Mom's kindness for granted. I won't forgive you if you don't apologize to Mom. This was the first time I witnessed Robert expressing such raw anger. The fact he was doing it not for himself, but for me, warmed my heart. Ugh, I've had enough. Why should I have to apologize? Not being ridiculed by Mom friends is for the kids' benefit too. Why can't anyone understand that? Screaming, Susan started throwing any brand name bags scattered around at me and Robert. Robert protected me and the children, leading us out of the living room. It's come to this. There's only one set of people we can rely on now. Let's call them. Robert took out his mobile phone and made a call. It was clear from the conversation that he was calling Susan's parents. Yes, it would be a great help if you could come right now. We'll be waiting. I hadn't seen Susan's parents since the birth of their 3rd grandchild and never imagined a reunion under these circumstances. In less than 30 minutes, Susan's parents arrived, rushing over in a taxi. As Robert opened the door to greet them, they headed straight for the living room with heavy steps. Susan, with her face flushed red, was throwing anything she could grab and resting when tired before starting again. She seemed to have lost control, acting in despair. What on earth is Susan doing as an adult? Susan stopped her tantrum only when she heard her dad, Brian, yelling. After Robert and I explained the situation to Susan's parents, they seemed shocked at first but understood everything after seeing the state Susan was in and the brand name bags. Robert, Nancy, I'm so sorry for all the trouble our selfish Susan has caused. Susan's mom, Emily, deeply apologized, while Susan, tears in her eyes, bit her lip in frustration, feeling misunderstood by everyone. Why is everyone trying to stop me? I just wanted to buy what I wanted, just wanted to show off to my mom friends. Earn your own money before you say such things. I won't allow you to trouble Robert and Nancy any further. Brian scolded Susan, and Emily followed. The responsibility for Susan's selfishness lies with us, her parents. We'll correct her vanity and wasteful habits. And she made a firm promise. Brian grabbed Susan by the scruff of her neck. We're taking you home to correct your twisted values. If that doesn't work, you can't complain if you end up divorced. Brian said this looking at Robert, who simply nodded in agreement. It seemed Robert's feelings for Susan had completely cooled, to the point where the idea of divorce did not provoke any resistance. Susan kept hurling insults at me and Robert until her parents took her away. Then, from somewhere, the sound of rumbling stomachs was heard. Turning around, the grandchildren were rubbing their bellies. Grandma, I'm hungry. Remembering that we hadn't had dinner yet, I rolled up my sleeves. Then, tonight Grandma will cook. I brought some vegetables with me. Opening the fridge, it was apparent Susan had been neglecting meals, with hardly any food inside. Still, using what was available, I managed to make 3 dishes with years of housewife experience. Wow, Grandma, you're like a magician. Seeing how the grandchildren enjoyed my cooking, I decided to move in and take Susan's place in this household. Robert had no objections, and the grandchildren were overjoyed. Yay! Having Grandma's cooking every day is the best, Michael said. While we were eating, I asked the grandchildren about what kind of mom Susan had been, and the answers were astonishing. Susan had been skimping on expenses for the grandchildren to save more money for herself. I wanted a new notebook, but Mom wouldn't buy it for me. I started playing baseball, but she wouldn't buy me a glove. The grandchildren had a lot of grievances against their self-serving mom. Robert stopped eating, put down his chopsticks, and apologized to his children. "I'm sorry. If I had realized, I wouldn't have allowed Mom's selfishness. I made you suffer." "Dad, you don't have to apologize. It's all Mom's fault." The grandchildren's kindness towards their dad moved me, and I couldn't help but tear up. "Grandma, are you crying?" "Not at all. Just something in my eye," I said, trying to brush it off. Later, under her parents' watch, Susan attempted one last act of defiance. "Tell Grandma and Dad to forgive me. If you don't help Mom, I'll make sure you're ambushed at school and suffer." She sent threatening emails to her children. Learning this, Robert was understandably furious. After discussing with his children, he decided, "I have decided to divorce Mom." "What will you do?" "We'll stay with Dad. We can't live with Mom like this. Besides, Grandma buys us everything we need and makes us lots of delicious food, so we don't need Mom." Thus, Robert and Susan officially divorced. Susan became widely known among her mom friends as the wife who was abandoned by her children and husband for her wastefulness. However, Susan's parents always cooperated with us gladly, and the grandchildren continued to open their hearts to them. They sometimes secretly visited to buy the grandchildren their favorite books without telling Susan. Meanwhile, Susan, now unable to show her face in public, covered her face with sunglasses and a mask, spending her days lurking around the elementary school her children attended. "I'm their mom. What's the problem with waiting in front of the school?" Susan retorted defiantly to the suspicious school staff, but upon learning this, Robert became furious again. "How shameless can Susan be? Try pulling a stunt like stalking again. I'll report it to the police immediately. I've already informed the school to do the same." He was uncompromising. "Don't do that. If I can't see the kids, how am I supposed to live from now on?" Susan wailed, but it was her own fault for ending up in this situation. Fed up with Susan's persistent calls, Robert eventually blocked her number. "I've been chosen as the captain for the next basketball tournament. Congratulations, that's wonderful. Then, Grandma must make a special lunchbox and go watch your game. I scored 100 on my next test. It's all thanks to the easy-to-understand textbook you bought me." "Well, then, I must prepare a feast tonight." The grandchildren smiled broadly. "Grandma, we love you." They hugged my waist. I hugged my three precious treasures tightly.